I'm ready.
Hello and welcome to the University of Dutch. I'm your co-host, JP John Poz from the Two Man Power Trip of Wrestling. And of course, joining me is the smartest man ever in the history of the business, the dirty one himself, Dirty Dutch Mantell. Dutch, what's going on here on the University of Dutch?
Well, I don't know. I'm the smartest man in the business because I don't have $1 billion yet, but I've been around the smartest guys in the business, so I've learned some things from them. So we wasn't on last week. We had a little technical difficulty, but we're back, and I'm getting a little more feedback from some of you guys. So, and you can email me at dirtydutchmantell@gmail.com and ask me questions. And next week, I think we're going to try to go live.
Yep.
And I don't know how John has it figured out. How will people find us, John?
So we'll be on YouTube. We'll hook up to Facebook. We'll be all over the place, but definitely YouTube and Facebook, and then just follow on Twitter your account and my account.
So we'll be live on all those accounts.
Yes.
At the same time.
Yes.
Really? I didn't know you could do that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know anything about the social media or anything. So, John, I've heard through the grapevine that you have a question about Will Smith and Chris Rock. So what was that question?
Very important question. Was it a work or was it a shoot? Did Will Smith really slap Chris Rock, or was it a little bit of a work? It smells like a work.
It smelled like a work. And Chris Rock is doing a concert now in Boston, and he wasn't sold out till after the Oscar award show was over, and everybody saw what happened. And now he completely sold out, and he has a tour coming up, and I think the rest of the tour is sold out. And Boston, the tickets were in such demand, and I don't know what he charges for these shows, but some of people were scalping the tickets for $1,000. You know, wow. $1,000 to hear a comic, that's almost unbelievable. It's not like hearing a band. And they wanted to see what Chris had to say about it. Is it a work? I think it is. Or either Will Smith has some serious mental issues, and when he got up there crying, I don't know if he was crying because he slapped Chris Rock or he's just messed up. But you can see if you slow it down, and when he walked up there, he didn't. And Chris Rock stood facing and leaned over into him and braced his neck like this, and his hands behind him. Well, what's that telling you?
Work.
He's saying, hit me, I guess. Yeah, if I saw a guy coming at me like this, I wouldn't stand there and put my chin out and the head out for him to punch. And wait a minute, and what man slaps? If you're going to get somebody, won't you just punch them? I mean, and it was a sissy-looking slap anyway. I think Chris Rock actually came out looking like the hero in this. And I didn't think the joke was that disrespectful anyway. He's a comic. What do you expect him to say? I don't know. But I think it has tones of work to it, kind of a bad one. And that's what people were asking me on Twitter. Was that real? Was that real? I said, guys, if you're going to slap somebody, I said, Lawler and Andy Kaufman, they had that wrapped up 30-something years ago. Because Lawler slapped the hell out of Kaufman, and nobody knew it was coming. Because he took a slap. Letterman actually, he was the man. If you watch that back with Lawler and Kaufman, Letterman didn't know what to do. And then when he came back on, then Kaufman came back out there, and none of that was scripted. None of that was supposed to happen. And he was just totally lost. And I've said this before. It made the top 100 moments on television. But that made that about 10 years ago, I think, or maybe more. it made the top 100 moments in television. That's a pretty good hurrah to them. They did a good job. And when they came out with that movie, Man on the Moon, if they hadn't smartened people up then, people would still think it was real. So they did a good job with it. All right, let's get down to this pay-per-view. And I just watched it, or most of it. I ran it back just a couple hours ago. And it says it was recorded in March the 13th, 2005. And how long ago was that, John? 17 years, right?
Yep, 17
years
ago. Orlando, Florida.
The Impact Zone, which was on the grounds of Universal Studios. It said it had 775 people inside the building, which I think it had more. I don't know where we get these numbers. And it says the buy rate was 20,000. I think the buy rate was better than that, because if the place sells out, because you couldn't charge for tickets, but the place was full. We turned people away, and I think this pay-per-view here was probably one of the better ones that we've covered so far. It still has its moments, but it does have some of its moments that really are very, very good. So let's start out here. It was, and I didn't see these matches here. It was the opening contest was a 8-man tag team match. Or did we see that? We did see that.
Yes, they did have
3 Live Crew, BG James and Conan. Yeah, and I don't know what those are. I don't care. 3 Live Crew, BG James and Conan at America's Most Wanted, Chris Harris and James Storm against Team Canada, which was Alex Jarrell. And I think somebody was hurt. I think Johnny Devine was hurt. That's why Jarrell came in, because we saw Devine there on crutches. And Bobby Roode, Eric Young, and Petey Williams. Very good match, because they kept it moving. Good first match. People were into it. And sometimes it's better to go back and look at these matches in retrospect. You like that word, John?
Love it.
Retrospect, I just thought I'd use that. But they did some really, really good stuff. And Team Canada went over. They beat Conan. And good match. Good opening match. Because I've always told by a old-time booker, he said, put the match that's going to get them up, put it on first. If you put a boring match on first, which we have, by the way, I mean, it's hard to get those people back. So get them up, get them moving, get them involved, and this match did that. So it was a good match, and and I'm going to go over in just a minute all the people you see on these pay-per-view who ended up later on in WWE. And I have heard through the grapevine that Vince watched these shows religiously. Because he watched the TV show, and he watched the pay-per-views especially. Except because we didn't have a pay-per-view on when they had one. Because you couldn't go head up to a WWE pay-per-view. You might draw 200 buys. No, we'd draw more than that, but no need fighting them if you don't have to. But he was aware of a lot of this talent that we had. When the talent eventually they got released, they needed a place to go, or they wanted to go to WWE. So when they called Vince up, he knew who they were. So actually, that's better than them calling up Cold Turkey and him not knowing them from Adam's House Cat, because he did make overtures to AJ Styles then, while AJ was still in TNA. Because he can't talk to him because he's under contract, so they can't talk officially. But people can carry messages, and they were telling AJ that Vince was interested in him, and he did well. He did, and he had a chance before he came to TNA. He had a chance to go to WWE, and it was the developmental. I don't think it was called NXT then. I don't know what they called it back in those days. The developmental company
HWA
in
was Les
Orlando.
Thatcher's Heartland Wrestling at that point,
What-
where they wanted to send him.
Really? But they had Orlando. It was open too, right?
FCW.
Didn't they have a couple then? Didn't they have what OVW at one time? Or was that later?
OVW is at that point. FCW is the one that they had later on. FCW is the late 2000s, 2010-ish. It's like that era, 2008. OVW, Deep South, and HWA was around 01, and they had Memphis too.
Memphis was horrible. I've seen guys went through there that, first of all, they had a guy that he didn't even know how to work. How he ever got in charge of an arm of WWE developmental, I have no idea. Because he damn sure didn't teach him anything, because he didn't know. But Les knows. But this guy in Memphis, I forgot his name now, but he didn't know anything. Hell, even Memphis didn't even use him when he was around.
Randy?
No, not Randy. It was another guy.
Corey Macklin?
No, not him. No, you don't even probably know this guy. But anyway, let's go to the second match. Chris Sabin and went up against Chase Stevens, and Chase was accompanied to the ring by his partner, Andy Douglas, and Chris Candido. And it ended up with, I think Chris went over, and then he was attacked by Sabin. And I know he was attacked by Andy Douglas and Candido, and the save was made by the Shocker. Now, what was the Shocker's name in Mexico? What was his name?
Shocker.
He had blonde hair. You remember that?
His name was Shocker in Mexico too.
That was his name in Mexico.
Mm-hmm. Yep. In
Mexico, okay. Because I knew him as something else. But in watching this, I got to thinking, Chris Candido, this was 2005. Chris Candido died in 2005. So I actually looked up the date. This pay-per-view was recorded on, March 13th, 2005. And Candido passed away on April the 28th, 6 weeks later.
Yep.
And I'm thinking, I knew that he had made a pay-per-view and he had done a TV, and he broke his leg. This was probably not the next TV taping, but probably the next one. And he made the pay-per-view, Chris did, and he broke his leg and was advised by the doctors in Orlando, or a doctor in Orlando, not to fly, but he did anyway. And you know, most doctors say if you have surgery, you shouldn't fly, because I don't know what it does, but what it did to Chris, it caused blood clotting in his legs, and that's what he died from. The blood clotted. He had a heart attack, I think. Then he passed away. So what we were watching here was about one of Chris Candido's very last TV appearances. And did you know Candido?
No, I know his brother, but
John?
Didn't really know him. No.
Do I have a delay there?
Just maybe a split second or so, yeah.
Who was his brother?
Johnny Candido.
Okay. I never met him. But anyway, Chris, good guy. Very good guy. And I was with him in Smoky Mountain. And I was in Puerto Rico, and he showed up there, him and Tammy. Oh, they was in bad shape in Puerto Rico.
I believe it.
You can't hear that now. Okay. But anyway, rest in peace, Mr. Candido. So, hate that happened. And let me bring up here, Dusty Rhodes was on this show, and the prior reviews that we've done, Dusty was booking, but Dusty wasn't booking, I don't think, then. I think he was booking later, but he was just a talent in this, is all he was.
Who
So
was
I
booking?
think if we actually handled him better, we handled him better than he handled himself, I think. But
So who was booking this show?
then Dustin Rhodes and Raven came out, and they had a match, which was okay, 6 minutes or so. And it ended up with Dustin winning the match. And, of course, they had a steel chair in there. It was okay. Then we had a match with Don and Ron Harris, the Sons of Anarchy crew. They were known as the Disciples of Destruction. And I did like that they rode motorcycles into the arena. And they rode in, and they looked like bikers anyway. They used to be bikers, I think. They never would say yay or nay when I would ask them. But those two guys I managed them in WWE, Jacob and Eli Blue, the Blue Brothers. So, and while we left there, one of them got mad one day. We'd been there about 6 months, and we kept waiting on the payoff from WWE to come in. And if you're wondering how payoffs work in WWE, now this is how they used to work. I don't know how they work now. And they probably work differently because the system is different. Say you do a pay-per-view Sunday, and a month goes by, but all they're doing there is just getting the people to pay for it. They're getting the money in. Then the next 30 days, they're getting all that money, who owes what, whenever. And then 2 months go by, you don't get your money. And then the third month, 90 days later, you get your money from the pay-per-view. So he got his money, Ron did, and he's the oldest Blue brother, the oldest Harris brother, and he didn't like it. And he said, I'm done. And he just walked out one night. That's when he was going with Medusa. Remember her? She's still around. I think he ended up marrying her, didn't he? Did he marry Medusa?
Not that I know of.
You don't know?
I don't think so.
I must have a tremendous lag. Are you even hearing me, John?
Yeah, I hear you. Can you hear me?
Hello?
Can you hear me? Hello, hello, hello. Can you hear me?
I'm not even hearing you.
Uh-oh.
Hang on a minute. We got a little bit of some difficulty here. You want to go out, John, and come back in?
Can you hear me now? Yeah.
Let me turn you up. Just a minute. All right, go ahead.
I don't think Medusa was ever married to Ron Harris.
You don't hear me?
Nope, I hear you.
I don't know what is wrong with this thing.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Can you hear me? Hello, hello.
Yeah, I can hear you. You're low. But anyway. So I was talking about the Blue Brothers, and he got mad about his payoff on, I forgot what it was. It was a March pay-per-view, I think, or whatever it was. And he just left one night and didn't come back. And then the other brother, which was Donnie, he quit a week later. So I'm there without anybody. Of course, they kept bringing me to TV because I had a contract with them. They kept bringing me. And I was sitting in a room one night with Bradshaw. And he starts talking. He had just come in from Germany, and he said they wanted to, he's there for a tryout, and they want to take a look at him. And I says, and I didn't have anybody. And I thought, well, it might be beneficial to both of us if I managed, let him see me managing him. I'm not saying I'm going to add anything to him, but, you can do a lot with a guy with a manager, especially a manager that can work a little bit. So I suggested it to Bradshaw. I said, hey, what about I go out with you tonight and let them look at that? He said, hey, it's fine with me. So we went out. They liked it. Bruce Pritchard come up, and he says, well, we're hiring you, John. Sign here. He signed it. And he says, you got somebody to manage. So that's how that worked out. And I managed for about a year. Oh, it was fun. So, but the match with Don and Ron Harris, they went up against these two guys. I call them Tilly and Bruno. They were called Delta something.
Phi Delta Slam. Yep.
And the pre-match stipulation for the contest that whoever the winning team represented will become the personal assistant of Director of Authority, Dusty Rhodes. So we had out there Tracy Brooks and who was the other girl? What was her
Tracy
name?
Brooks. Trinity.
But you know what Trinity, what she did mostly for a living back in those days?
Yeah, she was a stunt coordinator, right? Or a stunt woman?
No, she was a stunt double.
Okay.
Oh, she was good. She was really good. So, and Tracy Brooks was too. They had a decent match. Bruno and Tilly, they did good. So, so the fifth encounter, the fifth match was Monty Brown versus Tristan. And I'm thinking when I read this, when you sent this to me, I went, Tristan, who in the hell
Triton
is Tristan?
Triton.
Yeah, and I watched the
Triton, yeah.
tape, and it was Davy Boy Smith Jr. And I didn't remember him as being as big as he was. He was a big boy. He's about 6'6", and actually a good worker. And the only thing that bothered me about that match is somehow he took a bump out of the ring, and some masked guy just hopped in the ring. Where he came from, I have no idea. It made no sense at all. And then Monty gave him the pounce and a 1, 2, 3. And then Monty's looking around like he didn't know what was going on, which was most of the fans too. They were looking around and said, what the hell was this? I've never seen a finish like that. I have no idea where it came from. Because you're going to ask me later, who booked this card? Well, we all booked it. But some of these finishes, I didn't hear all of them. And the ones I didn't hear, this was one of them. Because the convoluted finish, I don't think it really got anybody over. It didn't hurt anybody, but it didn't get anybody over. Because it didn't make sense. So
Triton isn't
all I got to say about that.
Triton isn't Davy Boy Smith. Triton is not Davy Boy Smith.
Yep.
He's a wrestler named Ryan Wilson. He was an OVW, former OVW champion. Not Davy Boy. Looks like him though.
So that wasn't. I know we had Davy Boy there for a while.
Not Triton though. Nope. Triton was just another big guy from OVW.
He looked Davy.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Very much in the face, very much like him.
Well, that's my mistake because
Yeah.
I didn't meet him when he was there. He wasn't there long.
No.
So I'm wondering, it wasn't Davey Boy Smith, why we just didn't beat him. You know what I mean?
Yep.
No
Do you remember
idea.
you remember who the Max Man was that for some reason Monty Brown pinned but wasn't in the match? I believe it was Dennis Knight. Your good old buddy Dennis Knight.
Okay, was he the mask guy that rode in there?
Yep.
My old buddy Dennis Knight. He doesn't like me for some reason. I don't know. So that surprises me that Triton wasn't Davey Boy Smith.
Yeah, no, Ryan Wilson.
And I was there. Anyway, that was one of the lights went off in the building thing. Okay. I think the best match on the whole card was Hardy and Abyss. That was the best match on the card. And I've said this about the Abyss before, because when you gave him a match, he would obsess with that match. If you gave him a match in 3 weeks' time, he would think about that match day and night. He wouldn't give up on it. And if you gave him a match a week out, because he knew this match was coming up about 2 weeks out. And so when he got there, he got with Jeff. And the thing he had with Jeff was he was already over. You know, Jeff, they knew him from WWE. They knew him from all the things he'd done there. And they were perfect opponents for each other because they complemented each other well. And I can say now, but I'm not a fan of the tax. What was the finish in that match? I mean,
So he went to go through the black hole slam on the tax, but Hardy drove him into the tax first.
I remember the finish. I just watched it an hour ago. Hey, I just heard today about Bruce Willis. He can't remember anything.
Yeah, yep.
I'm getting that. What's your name again?
Yeah.
I've already messed up. I've already messed up Triton and Davey
Yes.
Boy Smith. So I might as well keep it going.
Actually, the tax was after the match. So the actual finish was Hardy did the twist of fate onto the ladder. That's how he got the victory. Then the tax came out afterwards, and he put the tax into him.
So
And supposedly, Jeff won. Yeah, Jeff Hardy wins. But supposedly, Abyss injured his finger afterwards. Yep.
And my favorite part of that match is some of those young people in the crowd, they'd never seen that before. And some of them were going, what the hell? Because as you know, I'm not a fan of tax. I mean, you'd have to actually throw me in them to get me even close to him. But he probably had 40 tacks sticking in his back. They say it doesn't hurt. I don't believe that. Tacks gotta hurt. I hate sharp, pointy objects going into my body like a needle. So I can never be a heroin addict. I can never be a tack addict. But they had a great match. They really did. And
did Abyss get injured in the match? Because the rumor was that he broke his finger. Did he get injured?
It broke his what?
Finger.
Yeah, well, he don't care. That guy, he could break his neck. He'd keep going. That's how obligated and determined he was to get into pro wrestling. See, I had met him before. I met him on some independent show up in Indiana or somewhere. And I watched him. He said, "Well, you watch my match." He's very, he's like, he's not clingy, but he wanted some advice. So I watched his match. It was good. Even for an independent show, it was good because he worked hard. And I told him I was going to Puerto Rico. I may have already told the story. And I went TNA's first show, maybe it was the third and fourth show. I met him on those shows. And that's when I ended up booking him in Puerto Rico. And I give him his gimmick, give it all. And he took that gimmick, he worked with it, he got comfortable with it. And I think Vince actually missed the boat on getting him. Because I knew that Vince had agreed to book him one time, and I forgot what happened. But I think Jeff didn't want him to go, and I can see why. Because he's a great talent. And he asked me could I call him up and tell him and ask him not to go. And I said, well, Jeff is I don't know what I told him, but I said, it's his decision. I said, actually, he should go. He'll make more money. He said, yeah, but, what he wanted me to do was pitch the TNA line. We're going to do a bunch of stuff with him, which we did. We kept that part of it. But, and looking back at it, I'm glad he didn't go because he's very emotional and he can't take ribbing, guys playing with him. He can't take that. If he'd have went up there, I gave him probably 4 to 6 weeks before they would have driven him nuts. So it was better for him to stay around TNA, guys that knew him and kind of cared for him a little bit, other than going up to WWE, because if they found out that he was a little bit sensitive on some subjects, they would have made his life miserable, and he would have left anyway. Now I can't say that for certain, but that's what I think about him. And he thinks about the business almost too much for their liking. It was almost too much for my liking because he was always asking me wrestling questions and wrestling psychology and this and that and the other, which I don't mind answering if I'm not doing something else. But he was dedicated to it, I'll say that. But the match with him and Jeff Hardy, best match on this card, kind of caught me out of the blue, but it was a match that Abyss excels in. It was the type of match that Jeff excels in. And they went outside at one point during this match, and it was double tables. And you could see the people looking over, there were people out front, but they saw him in the alleyway and they came around. It was well lit. And he got up there on some like big cross bars that hold the wall up. He was probably 15 feet in the air. And I don't know how he got up there, to tell you the truth. And he did that, what's it called, enziguri or whatever it is, the dive. Mm-hmm. And he went through them and broke the table. It was actually, I enjoyed watching that match. So, but best pay-per-view we've done that we've covered, I think. Then we have Kevin Nash, and he faced off against Billy Gunn. And one thing I can say about TNA during this period, they had really, really good video recaps. You can tell if you had just started watching that day, you could tell that this is what's happened before. And they had one exchange between Kevin and Billy. And I forgot what it was. He said, when you look at the face of a woman and you can tell she wants you, that's desire. And said, if you look at the face of a man, that's because you're going to get killed or something. And I forgot what Billy said, but Billy, this probably wasn't his word. Somebody gave it to him. But he said, no, my face is hatred, because he was supposedly, he hated Kevin. And he probably kind of halfway does anyway. But they had a really good match. I didn't like the finish at all. Here's another finish that I didn't know where it came from. And if you're listening to this, you're saying, well, wait a minute. What was your job there? Well, my job was for story, basically. And I don't know where some of these finishes came from. But thinking back on it, an old-time booker told me one time, never let the talent do their own finishes. And this is what I think we were doing. We were letting the talent come up with the finishes. Not in the finish. See, I can come up with a finish that if I'm going to get beat, doesn't hurt me too bad. See what I mean? But nobody really gets over that way. But if I come up with my own finish, say you're in the match, you're on the card 2 matches before me, but you might be doing the exact same thing, but I know nothing about. That's where your agents have to get together and say, oh, what's your finish here? What's your finish there? We got something close to that. So they got to kind of compromise with each other. So you don't have the same finishes on the same show, like a match or 2 apart. And you've seen that. I'm sure you've seen it, because that was the same finish so-and-so used.
Yep.
But in this match with Kevin and the New Age Outlaw, which was Billy Gunn, and you told me that he couldn't use Billy Gunn because of copyright restrictions from WWE, right? And they were WWE at the time, correct, in 2005?
Yes.
So that's why they called him the New Age Outlaw. And then they called him something else. Then they called him something else. They kept jumping back and forth. I mean, same guy, but and I think fans they can kind of live with that. It's the same guy, just under a different name. So, but I didn't much like this finish, and because it took too long. You had a doctor come down. Then you had another guy come down, Dirk Diggler, and I didn't know who in the hell that was when I read it. I said, who in the hell is Dirk Diggler? Now, what was he supposed to be? A manager?
I guess a lawyer, I think is what Jarrett was pretending that was his lawyer. Weird.
Well, I know who he is now. His name, his shoot name, was Tim Welch, and he was working in the office at the time as like an office aide or something like that. So, and here's another guy who wanted to get in the business so bad that he'd do anything. So, and Dirk Diggler, I have no idea where that name come from. It's probably almost a joke.
From that, from Boogie Nights, that movie with Mark Wahlberg, Boogie Nights.
Who's that?
There's a movie with Mark Wahlberg called Boogie Nights. I think that's where they stole that name from.
Okay. Well, but anyway, I didn't much like that finish. So I did like the finish with Abyss and Hardy. That was good. But the Ultimate X match was next. It started with 4 guys as a tag team match. Then whoever got beat would have to vacate. And this is for the X Division title. Was that what that was for?
Yep.
Then it worked down and they beat Elix Skipper in the first round. Then it became a 3-way. And then it got down to, I think Elix got beat. And then it got down between Daniels and AJ, and Daniels went over, which I kind of liked. So I'm just watching it today because it's been 17 years. And I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, those 4 guys right there were the best athletes in the company. They were probably, you could say all four of them was the top 10 athletes in all of wrestling back in those days. But AJ is flawless, and Ron Killings he's so smooth. And he does great stuff. He does the splits. He does all that. Plus, he's likable. And Skipper, you know what he can do. And then Chris Daniels. But very, very good match. So I would put the Abyss and the Hardy match first. This one second, because he had a great, great match. I took some notes here. And the last match was, oh yeah, that X Division match, that's when they had, I don't know, you know, this is a six-sided ring, which we don't ever say enough about six-sided ring.
Right.
Very, very difficult to work in. You imagine you work in a square ring, and all of a sudden they put some corners in it. They add 2 corners to it. Now it's 6 sides. And by the time the 6-sided ring got there, I had already stopped actively wrestling other than personal appearances. But it takes a lot of thinking about a 6-sided ring to even know where to go. Because it's not just sides anymore. You got the corners. Very difficult to work in. So I applaud those guys who learn to work in a 6-sided ring. Because all of a sudden you're playing football and now the field is 20 yards wide with an L at the end. See what I mean? You got to go, if you run a pass route, you got to go down, then you got to cut left to make the L. I don't know. Very difficult. And it's a wonder more guys didn't get hurt working in that ring. And I don't remember how the 6-sided ring even came into existence. I think that was Jeff's idea to make it stand out, which it did somewhat. But I don't think it stood out enough to make it worth the investment. Because when you have a 6-sided ring, now you got to build a 6-sided ring. I mean, they just don't go out to anybody and say, "Hey, we need a ring." Well, you got a 6-sided one? No, because you got to build them. I think we built 2, and to build those rings, they're about $8,000 a piece just to build them. That's a pretty good little chunk. If you have 2 made, because you got to have a backup ring. You know, you got like $15,000 to $16,000 tied up in 2 rings. And if you went and tried to sell a 6-sided ring, see if you could recover some of the money, there's not a market out there for 6-sided rings. That's thought I'd tell you. So, John, if somebody offers to sell you a 6-sided ring, keep bringing them down on the price. Okay?
maybe Mexico. Maybe Mexico would want it.
A lot of buyers. So, okay, the main event was Jeff facing off for the. Now, this was the TNA title or the NWA title?
NWA World Heavyweight Title.
Okay.
10 pounds gold.
And there's a Diamond Dallas Page, and we had some people at ringside. And it was Conan, Ron Killings, Monty Brown, B.G. James, Larry Zbyszko, who ended up later becoming like the head of the company, so to speak, later on. Dirk Diggler was out there still. Chris Candido, Andy Douglas, and Chase Stevens. And they went 21 minutes and 40 seconds. And it ended when Monty Brown interfered and pounced DDP, then pulled an unconscious Jarrett onto DDP for the pinfall. Now, this is when Monty Brown and Jeff were both heels. Later on, they did a split. We made Monty a babyface, and he was getting over. People liked Monty. And if we had more time with him, he would have become the face of TNA. And I think we've had this discussion before. What were you going to do with Monty? And he had a couple of matches with Jeff, I think. We didn't put the belt on him, but it was coming. Because that guy had it all. This is another example. Now, he went to WWE. This is another example of WWE taking a talent who knows how to get over, even though nobody has taught him anything about how to get over. He just knew how to get his personality over. Nobody taught him that. He just knew how to do it. He came naturally to it. And WWE took him. What name did they give him? You remember now?
Marcus Corvan.
You know, nowhere close to what he was. And he didn't last there. He lasted less than a year, right?
Yep. So he started in 2007 and he ended in June of 2007. So he only lasted there about 6 months.
So I'm going to read some of the notes I took down. I said it was the best pay-per-view that we've covered. I said that. And I told the Candido story about, when I heard Chris had died, I couldn't believe it. Even though it's 17 years ago, and how many guys have died since then? I mean, he was 33 years old. 33, and he didn't die because of drugs or anything. He died because of a blood clot, I guess, in his heart, I guess. That's all I can figure. And but I was talking about Vince watching this show because he could watch it. And all the talent that he ended up later on getting, he where in the hell did my notes go? I have no idea. Here they are. Okay, these are the guys that subsequently, that's another good word, right, John?
Yeah.
Subsequently, later, they went to WWE. Now, some of them had already been there, but they went back. One of them was B.G. James. He went back not as a wrestler. He went back as an agent. And most recently, he was just released from NXT.
He still wrestled though once in a while though. I mean, in like the late to 2010s, he still wrestled a little bit. Him and Billy Gunn had still wrestled a little bit.
And then Robert Roode, he went up there, and I think Vince saw him for the first time in TNA. And of course, Dustin Rhodes went back. Of course, he was familiar with Dustin. But Dustin went back. He was there when I was there. Dustin came back. And Hardy went back. Of course, Hardy's been back and forth like several times. He's made that trip several times. But, and if Hardy wanted to go back now, which I don't think he does, of course, the first thing Vince would ask is he straight? Because sometimes if your business is really bad, Vince may say, well, I don't care if he's straight or not. Just bring him back on in. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. And Ron Killings, he had been there before. And Abyss. And we just talked about Abyss going to WWE, but Vince knew who he was. So it's funny, all these guys that he saw, and it's funny, some of these guys that just disappeared through the pipeline. One guy who did go up there was AMW. What was James Storm's partner's name? Chris
Harris.
Chris Harris went. And I heard some stories that, Chris I think he'd only been in the business, and most of that time was spent in TNA. I think he was only in 5 years, 6 years, maybe just a little more. But I think he was in TNA 5 or 6 years, I think. But he went up there, and he was his first day there or his second week there. They asked him to get into the ring because they wanted to see what he could do, and he took umbrage to that. Umbrage. He was insulted. And he told him, he said, "No, I don't got to get in there and show you nothing. You know what I can do." And they didn't like that too well. So from then on out, it didn't go well for Chris. And I kind of hate that because he's a pretty good guy. And I wish they'd give him a chance. But sometimes you gotta go get along to go along to get along.
Yeah.
And I think he wrote it wrong like the first week or two in there, and it got back to Vince that, you know, he had a little bit of an attitude, and Vince doesn't like that. And he made it kind of tough on him. And I don't think he was there. I think he was there. How long was he there? Maybe 6, 8 months, 9 months?
Something like that. Yeah, it was only about 6 months or so. It wasn't long at all. Braden Walker was his name there. Yeah, weird name too.
Braden Walker. Let's go, Braden. Hey, it's been a great name now.
Yeah.
Braden Walker.
But with this pay-per-view, did you like that DDP Jeff Jarrett finish where Jeff screws him over to get the win? Do you like that finish? Do you like a screw job finish to end a pay-per-view?
What's this finish? What finish is this?
When Jarrett beat DDP to end the show. Like, basically Jarrett cheated with the help of Monty Brown. Do you like that, like, screw job finish to end a show?
Well, this is what you deal with. You deal with DDP, who thought he was a huge star. And you're dealing with, this is what you're dealing with. It's the secondary company. It's not as big as WWE. It would never be as big as WWE.
Right.
With all the money Tony Khan's got, I don't think AEW will ever be as big as WWE.
Right.
Because of their influence around the world and all the TV contracts and the coverage they have. So when a guy like DDP or Kevin Nash or those guys came in, and Booker T also, when you gave them the finish or what you wanted to do, and remember what I said earlier, never let the guys do their own finishes.
Yep.
Because they will come up with ways that even though they lose in a way that they can live with. But see, they didn't look at it as just a finish for that night. They looked at it as a eternal audition to return to WWE.
Okay.
So if Vince saw or heard that they were getting beat in the secondary company, why would he want you back in the primary one? Why would he want you back in WWE? See, that mean he would be bringing back a loser.
Right.
And the guys do this. So working under those conditions, while these finishes weren't ideal and far from ideal, sometimes here's another case where you had to go along to get along. And that's why some of these finishes. No, I didn't like that finish. But see, I didn't have the power Vince had. Jeff didn't have the power that Vince had. Vince Russo didn't have the power that Vince McMahon had. See, because you didn't have problems like that in WWE. Because if they says, well, Vince says he wants this, well, that's it. There's no more debating. I mean, it would turn into an argument by any other standards. But with Vince, you don't debate with Vince because he doesn't need you. I don't care who you are. Unless you're Roman Reigns right now or you're Brock Lesnar, Vince doesn't have time to hear it. So if they've asked you to do the job, so to speak, you either do the job or you leave the building and you just walk out of the company. And he's fine with that too. Because the buck stopped with Vince. If he didn't like it, then it didn't go. See, I've seen him walk in and just fire a guy on the spot. I tell you that story. What was this guy named Brad Maddox? I told you that story, right?
Yep.
He went. We were in some town, and he was in one of the warm-up matches, and they told him to go out and kind of warm the crowd up. Well, he called them a bunch of lazy bastards or lazy jack-offs or something, and Vince just happened to be listening on the headset, and he came back in there and he says, pack your bag and get out of the building. Just like that. And one of the agents, you know, he said, what? And the agent took him out. He said, hey, you just got fired, man. He said, for what? He said, well, he told you to warm the crowd up. He said, and then you insulted them and then used profanity. So, and that's the last time he was in a WWE ring. So it can happen just as quick as that. Because you didn't know his mood or whether he liked you or not. But if he fires you, I don't guess he liked you.
No.
And I don't know. It's weird navigating backstage. That's where the shoots happen. Somebody says, well, wrestling's a work. It is a work after you get through the shoot fighting in the back. And you're not shoot fighting in front of Vince. Now, Vince doesn't really care how it's going. You may be able to argue your case in front of him if you make sense and he wants to hear it. He may just change his mind. And I've told you this story too. He changed his mind one night when Cesaro and Swagger were in a match against the Usos. And he just sent word down. He said, change finish to the referee. They said, you know, put the Usos over or something. And it ended, and I was looking like, what the hell? And I asked Jack or Cesaro, I said, that wasn't a finish, was it? They said, well, you know, that's what Vince he just dialed in, so we had to do it. So, and you've heard the stories of Vince on the microphone to the announcers. Oh, my God. I used to stand beside him sometimes back there in the go position. In the go position, you have Vince sitting at a two-man, like a little booth table. And he's got a monitor, and the other guy has a monitor. That's usually where Triple H would sit, or B.G. James would sit, and then you would have another table, and that's where usually I can't even think of his name now. B.G. James's brother, what was his name? The referee?
Scott Armstrong.
Scott Armstrong. And he was talking to the refs. Then you have the timer guy there that's keeping, and then somebody else. 3 people would sit there. But I would stand back there because if you was ready to go on right after a match, they wanted you on the on-deck circle. That's what it is, I called it. The on-deck circle, so they wouldn't have to go run in and look for you. And you were obligated, and they wouldn't go look for you. They say, if you don't know when you're up, he said, if you're not there, you may get fired. So everybody was on that on-deck circle, and anybody could have heard this that was working the show. Vince would just cuss those announcers out. Literally, I mean, cuss, raise hell. He'd get up, throw stuff, MFer, son of a bitch. And everybody would leave him alone then because he was very temperamental. And he would tell Michael Cole, God damn it, I told you what to say. And then Michael would go and say it. You had to say it exactly like he wanted you to say it. And now I'm thinking back, if he has Pat McAfee out there, I don't think he does that with Pat because I think he respects his talent too much. But I'm sure when he tells Pat to get it in, Pat gets it in. Who else? One other guy that he didn't cuss was Lawler. Because I think he liked Lawler's juvenile perspective on things. And he would laugh. When Lawler would say something stupid, because Lawler said a lot of stupid stuff, and it was so stupid it was kind of funny. I think he liked Lawler, and he never really cussed Lawler out. And But I've seen some and Mick Foley, he actually spoke about that one time. He was doing commentary and couldn't continue it. Those Vince would just cuss him out. Now, unless you're married and used to getting cussed,
Right.
cussed out. But some guys don't play the game. But I think McAfee. You like McAfee?
Yes. Definitely.
He's actually good. So WrestleMania is 2 days from now. Just for somebody who's wanting to know when this is time stamped.
Yep.
This is a Thursday, and Saturday is April 1st.
April 2nd.
Is that April? Hey, maybe it's not Saturday because it could be April Fool's Day. They just told everybody it's the 1st. See?
True.
Let me get one finish from you. Let me get 2 finishes from you. And we'll know by the time we do this next week whether you're right or not. What is the McAfee and what's the finish in his match with what's that guy's name he's with? Not
Austin
Anthony.
Theory. Austin Theory.
What is it?
Austin Theory.
Austin Theory. Hey, we almost booked him in TNA about 4 years ago.
Wow.
Because he wanted to get booked. And I said, hey, I saw this guy, and I said, you need to book him. But by the time we got back to him, he'd already hooked up, not with them so much, but they wanted him to go to a training camp and do some stuff. But what's the finish in that one? McAfee versus Austin Theory. Who goes over?
I think Austin Theory is going to win thanks to Vince. I think Vince is going to cheat.
Well, I would put over McAfee because Theory, he needs time to grow a little bit. And that's because you're going to have you're going to have ESPN covering this. McAfee's a former player, and all the things that he can do with his interviews and get the word out. I think I'm going to go exactly against you and say McAfee goes over. Some kind of screwed up deal. And that won't hurt you. That won't even hurt Theory. It actually help him. Because if Vince questions him on it, now he's backing up and saying, yeah. Now Vince could lay on him heavy. Actually, it's a good story. I let Vince get back on the kid. And all right, let me ask you one more. What about Sami Zayn and the bullshit guy?
Johnny Knoxville. I think Knoxville, celebrity, got to go over, right? Celebrity's got to win that one.
I would think so, because look what he can do. Just get it out there. And that's all they really wanting to do, just advertise the company and get it out there, because now you got all those advertisers. See, they look way past that it's a wrestling match. That's just how that's their signboard out front. But there's the farthest thing from wrestling that you can get and still be in a ring. Yeah, I think Knoxville goes over, and I think it's probably going to be one of the most entertaining matches of WrestleMania weekend. Because I think all of Johnny Knoxville's old friends are going to drop in. They could drop in from the seating, pop up under the ring, and they're used to doing these crazy spots anyway, so I think people are really going to enjoy this. I think the most anticipated match of WrestleMania weekend is Stone Cold Austin versus Kevin Owens. Even though that won't be a wrestling match, so to speak.
Right.
And I've told somebody, as long as we see Stone Cold Steve Austin do the stunner on KO, everybody's happy. First of all, you're in Texas. He's from Dallas, that area.
Yep.
Plus, the Undertaker's getting inducted into the Hall of Fame. He's from Texas. So, and they said this was the biggest WrestleMania of all time. I kind of believe it when they put all that on there. And, you know, I don't think Steve Austin wanted to even step into a ring, but it's in Texas. It helps him. It helps the company. It helps KO. It helps KO. I don't care what happens, because he shared a ring with Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Yeah, true.
At WrestleMania. And then you have, of course, the Undertaker retiring, and the other big match is Roman Reigns and the big monster guy.
Brock.
How's that going to end?
Lesnar.
Brock Lesnar. How's that going to end?
I think Reigns is going to beat him, and I think it's going to be a bloody match, actually. I think Lesnar's going to end up bleeding, and I think they're going to put Roman over strong, I think.
I'm going to have to differ with you on that one.
Whoa, why? No.
Because, see, they can move a belt at any time. See what I mean? Well, let me ask you this. If he beats Brock Lesnar, remember I've told you this before, not that it's written in stone or anything, I just said it. They have no bench at all. It's like a baseball team they got one pitcher, but they don't have any other pitchers. They got one batter, but no other batters. So who's Roman going to go against? See, at least if they put Brock over, Brock still has his return with Roman, maybe at SummerSlam. And then they keep that going. Because it's about time for, and I think we're going to have Paul Heyman instrumental in this too. So I don't know what they're going to do, but that is a very, very interesting scenario between those two. Because if he beats Brock, I mean, Brock has to climb this mountain at some point. Or he's just a guy that takes the 3/4 of the time off and just comes in. Because now if they beat him on this and he leaves a beaten man, he loses his value, I think. Make sense?
Yep.
But I think Roman can keep growing. Because now he's showing more personality. He's getting a huge response from the crowd. He's not equal to Paul Heyman in talking, but he is showing that he can get there, because now the crowds are responding to him. I remember 2 years ago, they just look at him. But it took a lot and a lot and a lot of work to get him to where he is now. And I can see your viewpoint. Why would you beat him? Well, he's over now. But he has nobody to face. If he beats Brock and Brock leaves or whatever, he's already beat him. So your edge is still not there, because Brock is promised blood, right? They will be blood. I saw a movie like that one time. There will be blood. You ever see it?
Daniel Day-Lewis.
Daniel Day-Lewis.
Yes, great.
Good movie.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, I think this is one of our better podcasts right here. So people can take this. They got a lot of information. And you can catch me on Friday nights, because I do a critique show. I'm a critic now. I hate to say this, but at least I've been there. I'm not like a Dave Meltzer or a Brian Alvarez, or who's that other guy that runs it other? Who's the other big guy?
Wade Keller.
What's his name?
Wade Keller.
Wade Keller. Brother, I'm just like Bruce Willis. I can't remember nothing. I may be just sitting here talking one day, and I may say, "What the hell am I doing here? What am I even talking about?" And you said, "Well, you're supposed to be talking about wrestling." I went, "Really?" And I just forget everything. But I do a critique with two guys, Rick Ucchino and Sidney Poitier, I call it. And we watch SmackDown, and then we watch Rampage, and it goes off at 11 o'clock Eastern time. So we're on by about 11:05, and we critique the 2 hours. Now, critiquing SmackDown for the last 3 weeks has been very, very difficult because they're maintenance shows. Everything is shot that needs to be shot, and now they're just maintaining what they got. Okay, Charlotte Flair and Ronda Rousey. What we got there? Who's going over?
I guess Rousey, I guess. Kind of don't really care too much about that match. I guess Ronda has to win.
I guess.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, I think we'll have Ronda in there. So, see, on big shows, you usually try to keep them fans satisfied. They took the show. They got the ending that they kind of wanted. Of course, you can have other things happen along the way. That's what you got TV for. But I think you kind of leave them kind of happy on some of these big shows. So when they turn it off, what time does that show start Saturday? The Saturday show, the Saturday
8 o'clock.
WrestleMania.
8 o'clock.
No, what time does it really start?
Oh, I guess 7. I guess they start their nonsense.
Already started at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock.
Oh God, all that pre-show crap. Yeah, it's probably. I think actually it's 5 o'clock with all that stupid crap that they do. Yeah.
It'd going all day long. So is it sold out?
No. Not sold out. Only six. It's about 60,000 people each night so far.
How many?
60,000 each night so far.
Well, they'll make it look full anyway.
Oh yeah.
But that's kind of, I hate to fill a 90,000 seat stadium 2 nights in a row. If you put 60 or 70,000 in there 2 nights in a row, that's a hell of an accomplishment. So anyway, my hat's off to them. But anyway, back to my show. We do it 11 o'clock on Facebook, on sportskita.com. Sportskita Wrestling on Facebook. And you can catch us live. And we're sitting and we take questions and from fans, and sometimes they tip us and all this kind of stuff. So if we go live, John, people can ask questions, correct?
Yes.
And we will answer them. Do we have to answer all of them?
Not all.
You'll screen these questions. You'll screen these questions, right?
Yes. Yep.
So
and we'll pick and choose.
The questions too.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, that's all we got for today. We went as long as we did 2 weeks ago. We've gone 1 hour and 14 minutes so far. Thanks for your contributions, John. You
Yes.
didn't ask me any questions. Very few. So you got anything to add?
Nope. That's it. Just follow me on Twitter and Instagram at 2Man Power Trip. Check out the website, tmptempire.com. And Dutch, you are a rambling man. So, I get in what I can get in. You know what I mean?
The rambling man. You'll say the rambling man doesn't make much sense, but he just rambles on and on. He kills a lot of time. Anyway, hey, John, it's one of our better podcasts, I think, because I saw a better pay-per-view, and it's really hard when you seeing something you did 17 years ago. Now you're trying to come back and critique it. Mm-hmm. But I think the show was the best one we've critiqued so far. So anyway, catch us back here next week, Thursday night. So this don't go live Thursday night, does it?
It'll be out It'll probably be out tomorrow.
Oh, so it posts on Friday at what time?
Usually somewhere around like early morning, like 6 o'clock in the morning, something like that.
That early? Okay. All right. Well, John, join us. Pleasure talking to you again. And for everybody who joined us, join us again next week, because if we don't know the answer, we'll just make something up. Right, John?
Yes.
No question goes answered here. We'll give it an answer whether it's right or not. So, and that's in keeping with the world of professional wrestling. If you don't know the answer, make something up. So, John, thank you very much. And fans, we'll see you next week.